I'm 20, and I really need to get this off my chest. So, my name's your name, and I've been dealing with a lot of frustration about how my family treats me. Specifically how they've always treated my younger sister Madison like she's the family's golden child. It's been going on for years, and honestly, I can't stay quiet about it anymore. Let me set the scene for you. I was just 15 when my grandfather started a college fund for me. He knew my parents weren't exactly in a position to help with my education, and he wanted me to have a shot at something more. To me, it felt like a small victory. Finally, someone believed in me. My parents, they didn't really comment, but my sister Madison threw a fit. She cried, accusing Grandpa of loving me more, and my parents, of course, comforted her like it was the worst thing in the world. It was always Madison, never me, getting the attention. Fast forward to the moment that finally pushed me over the edge. I was working my ass off in high school, juggling part-time jobs, and doing everything I could to save for college. And yet, I always seemed to come second. I'd tell my parents about a school project I was excited about, and they'd brush it off like it wasn't important. But if Madison did anything, like a random dance competition she didn't even win, suddenly it was a big deal. They went out of their way to celebrate her, like she'd just won an Oscar. I went to my own award ceremony alone because they couldn't even be bothered to show up. It was like I was invisible. So here's the thing, after years of all this, I thought things would change when I went off to college. I thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd start to see me for what I was, a person with my own dreams and achievements. But of course, that didn't happen. Instead, my parents decided that Madison's Sweet 16 deserved to be the event of the century. And when I found out they drained my college fund, the one Grandpa had set up for me, to pay for it, let's just say, I snapped. This wasn't about just a party. It was about the fact that once again, Madison's needs came before mine, and my dreams, my future, meant nothing. I'll admit, I was angry, beyond angry. But I was also shocked and confused. How could they do this to me? The money wasn't even theirs to take. And yet, here I was, questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. Was I being dramatic, or was this the final straw? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. Not when they had taken everything Grandpa had worked so hard to give me. After I found out about the college fund being emptied, I couldn't focus on anything else. I spent days just staring at my bank account in disbelief. $5,000. That was it. The $55,000 Grandpa had put aside for me. Gone. I felt like my world was crumbling. How could they do this? How could they take something so important to me and just use it for Madison's party? The anger bubbled inside me, but I kept my cool, at least on the outside. I had to talk to them. I needed answers. So, one evening after dinner, I called my mum. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the knots in my stomach. Hey, Mom. I've been looking at Grandpa's college fund, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. I noticed most of the money is gone. Do you know what happened to it? There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long one. I could hear her shuffling around, maybe trying to figure out how to answer. What do you mean it's gone? She asked, sounding defensive. Are you sure you're looking at the right account? I checked, Mum, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I went to the bank. I know you and Dad took the money. It's listed in the account's transactions. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Then she sighed, the kind of sigh that meant she was bracing herself for a fight. Well, we used it for Madison's Sweet 16, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We needed to make it special for her. I just blinked. I didn't know what to say. You spent $50,000 on a birthday party. A party? I asked, barely able to keep the disbelief out of my voice. It wasn't just the party, she snapped, her tone suddenly sharp. There were expenses, venue, catering, decorations. We also got her a car, you know, to start her off right. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. So, you took my college fund for her birthday party? For a car? For a trip to Europe you didn't even invite me on? She didn't get it. She didn't see why I was upset. Sweet 16 only happens once, she said dismissively. You've got that scholarship, and the house. You don't need it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I didn't ask for a house, Mom, and the scholarship doesn't cover everything. It's not like I have endless money lying around. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I held it together, knowing this conversation was only going to get worse. Why didn't you ask me before taking the money? This isn't just about the party. It's about my future. But she wasn't hearing me. Stop being so dramatic, she muttered. We were just trying to do what was best for the family. That was the moment I lost it. What's best for me, Mom? I'm the one who's been working my ass off for years. I've sacrificed everything for this family, and now I'm supposed to be okay with you taking my future to fund Madison's special day? Her response was more of the same. You're the older one. You're supposed to set an example. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? I almost screamed. Happy for her? Madison, the one who gets everything handed to her, who can do no wrong. I had spent years in the background, silently accepting whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. But this was too much. I hung up on her. The silence in the room felt suffocating. Later that night, after trying to process everything, I called Grandpa. The second I heard his voice, I broke down. Grandpa, I need you, I choked out. They took it. They took everything. The money you saved for me. It's gone. At first, he didn't say anything, but I could tell he was furious. Pack a bag, he finally said, his voice calm but firm. I'm coming to get you in the morning. You deserve better than this. The next day, Grandpa showed up early, standing on the porch like he had all the time in the world. When my parents tried to argue, he didn't even listen. He just looked at them, then turned to me and said, She's coming with me. She deserves better than this. I grabbed my suitcase, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Walking out that door, I knew I wasn't going to take any more of their manipulation. They could have their perfect family, but I was done being the scapegoat. Moving in with Grandpa and Grandma felt like stepping into another world. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They supported me, encouraged me, and most importantly, they listened. I could breathe again. But things weren't over. My parents called, crying, trying to guilt-trip me into coming back. We miss you, my mum would say. We're sorry, don't be so stubborn. But nothing they said changed the fact that they had taken away my future. And that was something I couldn't just forget. And then, of course, there was Madison. She barely seemed to notice the chaos she'd caused. She texted me every now and then, asking for advice on random things, or sending me TikToks she thought were funny. I didn't care anymore. I had to look out for myself now. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. When I found out the truth about what had happened to my college fund, I knew things could never go back to the way they were. But that didn't stop them from trying to play their games. The phone call came late one evening, and I knew instantly it wasn't going to be good. The number on the screen was my mom's. I hesitated before answering, but my heart was pounding in my chest. What now? Hey, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, though I could feel the anger building. Sweetheart, she started, her voice shaky, like she'd been crying. We need to talk. I felt a pit in my stomach. What's going on, Mom? I asked, bracing myself. Look, I know you're upset, she continued, sounding exhausted. And I know you're angry about the money. But you need to understand. We didn't do it to hurt you. We just wanted to do something nice for Madison. She's been struggling, and this was her big moment. We never meant for you to feel this way. I could barely hear her over the pounding in my ears. Madison. Again, it was always Madison, wasn't it? You spent my college fund on her sweet 16, Mom. My voice was rising now, no longer able to stay calm. You took everything Grandpa saved for me, and used it for her birthday party. I don't care if it's her big moment. It's my future you stole. There was a long silence, and I could hear her sniffing on the other end of the line. I know, she whispered. I know it was wrong, but we had to make it up to her. She's been so difficult lately, and we didn't know how else to make her happy. I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, hot and suffocating. She was trying to justify it. She was trying to make it sound like they had a reason to take everything from me. But there was no excuse for it. I took a deep breath, holding back the tears that were threatening to spill. And what about me, Mom? What about my happiness? What about the dreams Grandpa had for me? Did you think about any of that before you made this decision? Did you think about how much it hurt me? She didn't answer at first. Instead, I heard a door creak in the background. Then Madison's voice cut through, sweet and soft, like she was on the phone too. Mom, what's going on? She asked, feigning concern. For years, I'd been silenced, ignored, and shoved to the side. But not anymore. Madison, I snapped, my voice trembling with both anger and heartbreak. This is your fault. You took everything from me. You were the one who made my parents choose you over me. I've spent my whole life being the second choice, and I'm done. Are you serious right now? Madison's voice was sharp, mocking even. It's just money. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? I could feel my body shaking with frustration. Because it's not just money. It's my future, Madison. And you don't even care. You've never cared about anyone but yourself. I heard her snicker. Oh, please, don't act like you're some saint. You've always been so bitter. This is just the last straw for you, huh? That was it. The words stung more than anything else. More than the betrayal. More than the years of favoritism. Bitter. That's how she saw me. And maybe, just maybe, she was right. I was bitter, but I was done pretending. Yeah, maybe I am bitter, I said, my voice growing stronger with every word. But I'm also done. I'm done being your backup plan, done being the one you throw under the bus to make Madison feel better about herself. I've had enough. My mum spoke again, her tone desperate. No, honey, please don't do this. You're family. We're family. You can't just cut us out over something like this. But it was too late. I'd already made up my mind. The damage had been done. I'm not doing this anymore, Mom, I said firmly. I don't need you. I don't need a family that treats me like I'm nothing. I'm going to make my own way. I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. I'm done. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. She was stunned. And for a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would try to apologize, try to make things right. But no, she didn't. Instead, I heard her voice crack, and she whispered, "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, my voice steady. "But I can't keep living like this. I'm not your second choice anymore. I'm going to make my own life, without you." I hung up the phone, and the silence in the room was deafening. My heart was pounding, but a strange calm washed over me. I was done being controlled by them, done being the one who always had to clean up the messes they made. I walked over to my desk and grabbed my laptop. I'd been thinking about this for days, but now it was time to act. I opened my email and started drafting a message to a lawyer. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to fight for what was mine. Grandpa's legacy wasn't just a college fund. It was proof that someone believed in me, and I wasn't going to let my parents destroy it. As my fingers typed the message, I felt a surge of defiance. No more. No more hiding in the shadows. No more feeling like I wasn't good enough. I was finally standing up for myself. And no one, not even my parents, was going to take that away from me. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. Chaos, anger, and a sense of finality that I hadn't fully anticipated. The next morning, my mum called again, this time with a sharper, more defensive tone. I let it ring, my phone vibrating insistently on the coffee table. I wasn't ready to talk to her. I wasn't ready to hear her plead with me, try to guilt-trip me back into their world of toxic favoritism. But then my dad called. Same response. I ignored him too. And then came the text messages. "Why are you doing this? You know we've always been there for you. We gave you everything. I can't believe you're doing this to your family. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Madison is heartbroken. She thought you were better than this. You're tearing the family apart." Each message felt like another punch in the gut. I wanted to respond, to tell them everything I'd been holding inside for so long, but something stopped me. It was like my mind was clearer now, more determined. No more begging, no more apologies. They couldn't see the damage they had done, and I wasn't about to let them twist the truth to fit their narrative. When they didn't stop calling, I blocked their numbers. No, it was harsh, I know, but it felt necessary. I needed space, and they weren't going to give it to me unless I took it. Days passed. Weeks, actually. And still, I didn't hear from them directly. They reached out through my grandparents, who tried to mediate the situation. But I could tell my grandparents were growing tired of it all. They didn't want to choose sides, but I could hear the disappointment in their voices when they told me my mum was just heartbroken and that my dad had been struggling. They said they understood, but I could tell they didn't fully grasp the depth of the situation. One afternoon, my mum showed up at my doorstep unannounced. I didn't expect it, but somehow I wasn't surprised. I was just about to start dinner when I heard the knock. When I opened the door, she stood there, her face pale, red-rimmed eyes as if she hadn't been sleeping. She looked at me, almost pleading with her gaze. "You've really cut us off, haven't you?" she said, her voice quiet, almost shaky. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to yell, to finally express all the hurt and anger that had built up over the years, but I just couldn't. Instead, I stepped aside and let her in. We stood in the living room, both of us too tense to sit down. "Mom, I'm done," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I can't keep living in a family where I'm not even treated like I matter. You took away my future. You took Grandpa's legacy. You took everything from me for Madison's Sweet 16. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. You don't get it, do you? I continued, my voice shaking but strong. It's not about the money. It's about how you never saw me. You never saw me for who I am, what I want to do with my life. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm good enough for you, and it's never been enough. And I'm done. I can't keep playing this role in your story. I could see her eyes welling up, but it didn't change anything. It didn't make me feel guilty anymore. You're just going to walk away, after everything we've done for you? She asked, the disbelief in her voice clear. I'm walking away because I've done everything for you, I snapped. And now I'm finally doing something for myself. There was a long silence. She didn't know what to say. She just stared at me, as if she was seeing me for the first time. And maybe in that moment, she was. I don't need you to understand, I said, my voice softer now. I just need you to know that I'm not coming back. I didn't wait for her response. I couldn't. It felt like the weight of years of resentment had lifted from my chest, but also a part of me felt empty. There was a part of me, deep inside, that still wanted to make them proud, to be part of their world. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't my fight anymore. After she left, I spent the night in a haze of mixed emotions, relief, guilt, anger, and the strange emptiness of knowing I had truly walked away. But then, as I sat alone on my couch, scrolling through my phone, I saw a message from my best friend, Emily. How are you doing? Do you need to talk? She wrote. I could almost feel the warmth of her words through the screen, and it was exactly what I needed. I took a deep breath and replied, Thanks, Emmy. I'm getting through it, but I think I'm finally okay with it. I'm ready to start over. I had never needed her more. She was the first person who didn't expect anything from me, who just wanted me to be happy. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could be. I wasn't alone. That night, I didn't think about my parents or Madison or their angry texts. I thought about the future I was building, step by step, all on my own. I didn't have all the answers, but I was finally free. And that was enough for me. It's been a few months now, and honestly, I feel like a different person. It's hard to believe just how much I've changed in such a short time. After cutting ties with my family, I wasn't sure where I'd end up or what I'd do next. But with each passing day, I found my strength in ways I never imagined possible. One of the first things I did after my final conversation with my mum was start planning my future, my real future, not the one my family had tried to force on me. I didn't need them to tell me what I was capable of. I already knew. I enrolled in a couple of additional courses to make up for the time I'd lost with everything going on. I even landed a part-time job in an architectural firm, something I never thought I could do while juggling family drama. And you know what? It felt amazing to be doing something that was all about me. I also moved forward with my wedding plans. Jake, my partner, has been nothing but supportive through all of this, and I finally felt ready to focus on the one thing I've been putting off for too long: us. Planning our wedding was an act of reclaiming my life. I poured all of my energy into the details, making sure everything was a reflection of who I am, not who my family wanted me to be. From the venue to the guest list, I made decisions that felt right for me, not for anyone else, and it was incredible to see how it all came together. As the big day neared, I realized how much lighter I felt. I wasn't walking around with that heavy burden of guilt or resentment anymore. I had made peace with myself. Sure, there were moments when I wondered if I was making the right choice by cutting my parents out. But every time I looked at the life I was building, I knew I had made the only choice that mattered. The wedding itself was everything I had hoped for. A celebration of love and new beginnings, surrounded by friends who respected me for who I was, not for the role I played in my family's twisted dynamic. When Jake and I exchanged vows, I could feel the weight of everything I had let go of, and the freedom that came with it. There was no more trying to fit into a mold. There was only us, and that felt more than enough. As for my family, I won't lie. It hasn't been easy. My parents sent a few messages after the wedding, saying they were sorry things had to be this way. They asked me to come home and work it out, but I could tell it wasn't a real apology. It was more of an attempt to smooth things over without actually acknowledging their wrongdoings. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But here's the thing. I'm finally okay with that. For the first time in my life, I'm not chasing their approval. I'm not trying to earn their love or their attention. I'm proud of who I am, and that's enough. Looking back, the most important lesson I've learned is the value of self-respect. Standing up for myself was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding. I realized that no one, not even my parents, should be able to dictate my worth. I don't need their validation to feel good about myself, and I don't need to carry their expectations anymore. I've learned that sometimes, to build a life that's truly your own, you have to walk away from the things that hold you back, even if those things are people you thought you'd never be able to let go of. Family is supposed to be a support system, not a prison, and I refuse to let anyone trap me in a role I never asked for. So here I am, standing at the beginning of my new life. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and I've never felt more free. I have dreams now, big ones, and I'm no longer afraid to chase them. Maybe my family will come around. Maybe they won't. But I've come to realize that I'm strong enough to face whatever happens next. And that's the most empowering thing I could have learned. The future is wide open, and I'm ready to fill it with the life I've always deserved. Story 2. The screech of tires and the shattering of glass are forever etched into my memory. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun blazes down relentlessly, and I was driving home from work, lost in thought about the upcoming weekend. Suddenly, a car slammed into my side, sending my world into a dizzying spin. I remember the sickening crunch of metal, the feeling of weightlessness as my car flipped, and then nothing. When I woke up, the world was a blur of white coats and concerned faces. A paramedic told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky? I didn't feel lucky. My leg throbbed with a bone-deep ache. My ribs felt like they were on fire. And the doctor spoke of internal bleeding, emergency surgery, and a long road to recovery. Through the haze of pain medication, all I could think about was my parents. Surely they'd be here soon, their faces etched with worry, their hands offering comfort. I imagined my mom fussing over me, my dad cracking a joke to lighten the mood. But hours turned into days, and the only visitors I had were the nurses and the occasional concerned friend. My phone, miraculously intact, became my lifeline. I texted my parents, each message a plea for a response, a sign that they cared. Had surgery. It went well. Miss you guys. Still pretty sore, but the nurses are taking good care of me. When are you coming to visit? Silence. Days blurred into an agonizing eternity. I lay there, staring at the sterile white ceiling, the silence amplifying the ache in my heart. Finally, on the third day, a text. Not the, "Oh my God, sweetheart, are you okay?" I craved, but a curt, "We're busy with work. We'll try to visit soon." Busy with work. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. My friend, Sarah, who lived a few states away, had managed to contact my aunt, who lived nearby, and she'd been by twice already. Apparently, busy with work meant attending my brother Ethan's award ceremony. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong, the recipient of endless praise and adoration. And I was an inconvenience. Ethan was brilliant. I'll give him that. He landed a high-powered job straight out of college, climbed the corporate ladder with ease, and this award was a big deal. But I was here, recovering from a near-death experience, and my own parents couldn't be bothered to visit. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't just busy, they chose Ethan over me. Again, a familiar anger, a deep-seated resentment that I'd tried to bury for years, bubbled to the surface. I was tired of being the afterthought, the invisible child. I finally confronted them, pouring out my hurt and frustration in a series of angry texts. Their response was predictable. Ethan's award is a once-in-a-lifetime event. We couldn't miss it. It doesn't make sense for us to waste time visiting you when Ethan is out there making the family proud. Waste time. That's what I was to them. A waste of time. A week crawled by, each day a dull echo of the last. The physical pain was slowly receding, but the emotional wounds festered. Then, one morning, my parents appeared at my bedside, their arms laden with flowers, their faces plastered with forced smiles. I knew it wasn't a change of heart. They needed something. My mum's carefully constructed facade crumbled quickly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stammered out the news. Ethan had been arrested. Fraud. Embezzlement. Apparently, my golden boy brother wasn't so perfect after all. He'd been cooking the books at his fancy company, siphoning off money into his own accounts. It was a big deal. A scandal that could land him in jail for years. And my parents, who had poured their life savings into his education and career, were now scrambling to save him. They needed money for his bail, for lawyers, for damage control, and they'd come to me, their forgotten daughter, their waste of time, to ask for help. The irony was almost unbearable. I stared at them, a maelstrom of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, betrayal, a perverse sense of satisfaction. They hadn't cared when I was lying here, broken and alone. But now, when their precious Ethan was in trouble, they suddenly remembered they had another child. "We need your help, sweetheart," my mum pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. "We know you have some savings." "Savings I was planning to use for a down payment on a house," I said, my voice flat. "A house I might have been able to afford if I hadn't had to pay for my own medical bills." My dad's face hardened. "This is family. This is about loyalty. Ethan needs us." "Ethan made his choices," I retorted. "He's always made his choices, and you've always been there to clean up his messes. Well, not this time." They argued, they pleaded, they threatened. They painted me as the villain, the heartless sister who was abandoning her family in their time of need. But I held firm. I was done being their safety net, their emotional punching bag. They left, their faces etched with fury and disappointment. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of power, a sense of control. I'd finally drawn a line in the sand, and it felt damn good. The next few weeks were a blur. Ethan's case made the news, his fall from grace a source of endless gossip and speculation. My parents, once so proud, were now humiliated and ostracized. They tried to spin the narrative, to paint Ethan as a victim, but no one was buying it. They called me a few more times, their voices laced with bitterness and resentment. I ignored them. I was done. I was finally free. The silence from my parents was short-lived. When begging and berating failed to sway me, they resorted to a new tactic: character assassination. They contacted my extended family, weaving a tale of my supposed heartlessness and selfishness. I was the ungrateful daughter, the one who refused to help her brother in his time of need. I learned of their smear campaign through my cousin Liam. He called, his voice a mixture of concern and disbelief. "I heard what your parents are saying about you," he said. "It's not right. They're twisting the story, making you out to be some kind of monster." Liam's call was the first in a series of unexpected conversations. Aunts, uncles and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, offering support and sharing their own experiences with my parents and Ethan. It turned out I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by their manipulative behaviour. There was a long history of favouritism, of Ethan's misdeeds being swept under the rug while others were punished for far lesser offences. My aunt recounted how Ethan had borrowed a significant sum of money from her husband for a business venture that had gone bust, and how my parents had cut off contact when they were asked to repay the debt. Another cousin told me about the time Ethan had crashed my uncle's car and blamed it on a parking attendant, a lie my parents had readily supported. These revelations were both shocking and liberating. For years, I'd internalized the blame for my parents' treatment, believing that I was somehow flawed, unworthy of their love. Now, I saw that it wasn't about me at all. It was about them, their twisted priorities, and their unwavering devotion to their golden boy. As for Ethan, his case dragged on. My parents, desperate to save him from jail time, finally managed to scrape together enough money for bail. But the investigation continued, and the evidence against him mounted. Then, a surprising turn of events. Ethan, facing the prospect of years behind bars, decided to cooperate with the authorities. He provided information about the higher-ups involved in the fraud, implicating executives who had used him as a pawn in their scheme. In exchange for his cooperation, he received a reduced sentence, 1 year in prison and community service. I felt a flicker of sympathy for him, a recognition that he too had been a victim of my parents' toxic ambition. They'd instilled in him a belief that success was everything, that appearances mattered more than integrity. But sympathy didn't translate to forgiveness. He'd made his choices, and he had to face the consequences. My parents, predictably, remained in denial. They continued to paint Ethan as a victim, a good kid who'd made a mistake. They couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge the role they'd played in his downfall. I'd reached my limit. I cut them off completely, blocking their numbers, their emails, their every attempt to contact me. I informed the front desk at my apartment building not to let them in. I was done. It was a surprisingly easy decision. Walking away from them wasn't the heart-wrenching experience I'd always feared. Instead, it was liberating. I was free from their judgment, their manipulation, their constant comparisons. The support from my extended family was a balm to my wounds. They welcomed me with open arms, offering the love and acceptance I'd craved for so long. It was ironic, really. My parents, in their desperate attempt to isolate me, had inadvertently pushed me towards a truer, more genuine family. I still have scars, both physical and emotional. The accident, the betrayal, the years of neglect. They've left their mark. But I'm healing. I'm building a life for myself. a life based on my own values, my own dreams. And for the first time, I'm filled with a sense of hope, a belief that the future can be brighter than the past.